Hello, welcome to The Wave with Dave and Pat. We are back again, another episode. We had a great week last week with Company 23. We finally achieved our first 100 subscribers on YouTube, so hell yeah. Dave and I
Yes.
are super excited. This has been amazing. The community has been amazing. The comments we've been seeing in the videos have been amazing. We've been trying to interact with everyone. We've just loved how much feedback we're getting, and we're really committed to making the show the best that we can make it. And we really are trying to ride the line of technical and entertaining. We want everybody to be on the same page. So, for anybody new joining us, my name is Patrick. I'm the owner of Subaru Mechanics Facebook group, and we have started this podcast. Dave is one of our sponsors from Simply Subarus. He has a shop out in Arvada, Colorado. If anybody ever needs a specialist, he's the guy. Today, we have a very fun, exciting episode again for you guys. Probably one of the better known issues in the mechanic world is Harbor Freight jack stands. So we're going to talk a little bit about these jack stands and the failure, and then some other tools and things in the industry to keep an eye on, things that have failed in the past, or just it never hurts to double check your toolbox and make sure you don't have something that is recalled or broken, or maybe you bought that eBay crank tool that you used once and you're like, hey, it works, and it really doesn't work. You just need to be careful. So you never know. And then we are going to talk a little bit about our new segment, which we brought in last week, is the WRX Files, where we are diving into Subaru's history, some things that are maybe not as well known about Subaru and projects that they've worked on and things that they've done. Last week we jumped down the rabbit hole. This week we are talking about a new topic, so hang around till the end if you guys want to hear that. But we're going to jump right in, and Dave and I were talking about tools last week with Mark from Company 23. Great episode. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. And something that was brought up, I think, briefly, was talking about quality of tools and some of these tools that are put out that people get recalled, or they either don't believe in them or whatever it is. And one of the big ones that everyone knows about is Harbor Freight. And if you haven't heard, or you live under a rock, the Harbor Freight jack stands will give out previously to the recall and drop a car on you. And so, something that happened back in 2020 was that Harbor Freight had these 3-ton and 6-ton jack stands. And these jack stands were made, I'm sure, in some factory somewhere in another country. And the issue was...
Well, they were clearly made in China, at least according to what I read.
Yeah.
It said they were manufactured by one of their Chinese manufacturers.
Well, there you go. So they manufactured in China, had it shipped over here, and people started using them. And one of the things that happened is that if you've ever used jack stands, it has a ratcheting mechanism where it's got teeth to it, and you can move the jack stand up and down. It grabs on whichever height you need it to be. And the whole point of a jack stand is to be the backup safety. If you drop your car, if you are scared that it's going to fall, or, it's supposed to be life-saving. So when it doesn't do the thing it's solely designed to do, you end up with a problem. Dave, have you ever used any Harbor Freight jack stands at your shop?
Actually, we don't have any of those aforementioned jack stands, fortunately, at our shop. That's something that I myself believe in very, very strongly. When it comes to certain equipment that it presents a very high danger level and a safety issue, that we spend, the proper money to get something that is is backed and reputable. Another product that kind of immediately comes to mind is I don't know why, but I've always been told they were called this when I was in my tenure of being a mechanic. Was they were called an air pig, or just basically a portable air tank. I don't know if you've ever seen those. You fill them up and then you can walk out to a car in the lot and fill it up, and it's a lot kind of easier than bringing a whole compressor, mini compressor set up, and it's a lot quicker. However, those things are incredibly dangerous and always kind of scared me because they can hold 150 psi and they're just effectively a giant bomb, made out of metal and compressed air. So that's where another instance to spend the money, get something quality. I have to question too with the Harbor Freight jack stands. Unfortunately, I feel like there is a marginal user error that is presented to where not everybody is utilizing a jack stand properly. You're not supposed to jack the car up and leave the car on the jack and put the jack stand there as a safety, quote unquote. You're supposed to have the weight of the car on that jack stand and loaded the entirety of the time that you're working on the car. And so I think there is some, not to be in their defense, but I'm sure there is certainly a percentage of use case that presents even more risk, even to a reputable brand, where if you were to improperly use that jack stand and effectively drop a car 5 feet onto it, it's not intended to be designed to take that type of impact.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something maybe not talked about as much is that when Subaru makes a car, they have to destroy a lot of those cars before they can release it. They have to prove that you are not going to die the second you get in this car and hit a guardrail. And you know what? It costs a lot of money, and it costs a lot of cars, and it costs a lot of people that work there, the testing and the time. And a lot of these tool manufacturers, I feel like not a lot of them go by a code of ethics or any kind of like regimented testing for these tools. So I'm sure if Harbor Freight would have said, you know what, we are going to make millions of these things, maybe we should really give them a good run before we put them out there, and really just like, hey, if it's a 6-ton jack stand, 6 tons is a lot of weight to put on a jack stand and have somebody underneath it and potentially die. So
Absolutely.
maybe we should put a 6-ton truck on these jack stands and just confirm that this is not going to be a problem. So
well, and I like the use case. For example, we have a couple lifts at my shop that are smaller lifts. I mean, fortunately, we only are a Subaru shop, so we're never lifting big, trucks or anything like that. However, there is a weight limit on them, and it's definitely fairly lower than a lot of bigger lifts that you'd find in like a normal shop that works on trucks and things like that. In our case, we get away with it, as I mentioned, being a Subaru shop, but I remember the advertisement from the manufacturer where they put like a F350 dually on this lift, which is more than double its weight capacity, what they rate it to. And they actually, it has 5 anchor points, I think, in each lift, and they took out 2 of each post. So they only had 3 anchor points in each post.
Yeah.
And it held a F350 dually, and that was kind of what they were trying to prove is their engineering, that look, it is built to be overkill. It's designed to withstand this. Please don't lift an F350 dually on this with 3 anchors in, but the anchors are technically strong enough, and so is our other components in the lift. And this is, certainly I'm sure they were stressing things, but it was able to kind of, achieve that. And I see, using a case, an old marketing thing with Snap-on that they did where they hung a full giant toolbox off of one of their ratchets, basically just the handle, and that was just kind of to show their prowess of how strong their tools were.
You know what? The best marketing campaign I have ever seen with regarding to quality of tools is when Snap-on put the big massive truck and they put one of their toolboxes under each wheel. That was like,
I remember that.
that was so cool to me. And I was like, this is how you do it. This is how you prove to people, hey, not only are we testing these things, but just in case you ever get it in your brain to put a truck on top of 4 toolboxes, this is how sturdy these things are. And I feel like I'm a big fan of over designing, right? If Harbor Freight was going to put out jack stands that are 6 tons, they should be good for 8 tons, because you
Agreed.
know that somebody out there is going to have something borderline 6 tons and say, well, it'll probably be okay. And
It's
that's,
6.5 tons. It'll be okay.
yeah. So, it could probably go a little over, but like, if you make things the way they are, right? Like people like me, I would never put anything over 5 tons on a 6 ton Jackson. I would be nervous doing anything in that range. Certain people, I would assume, would have no problem going to the max number or over and just saying, screw it, we're just going to run it, So I find it awesome that companies like Snap-on, they do so much testing. They are like, it's hard to complain about the prices of Snap-on. I know that they are probably the most expensive tool brand, but the quality of the stuff they put out and their warranties are insane. And that's why when you run into an issue like this with Harbor Freight, I mean, 1.7 million jack stands. That's a lot of jack stands to recall. And not just that, the ratcheting was not even part, like the whole issue. They also had a pin issue. The pin that would go into, I guess the pin that locks the ratcheting section together.
Yeah.
The pin would shear, and I think that was part of the whole failure. Was it was kind of a 2-piece thing going on. So there were people,
And then I think it would ratchet from there
yeah,
once that pin sheared.
yeah, and there were people that were modifying these jack stands. They were drilling holes in the side of the jack stand, putting a second pin, so it was like a cross pin. And it's things like that drive me crazy, because I'm like you are trusting your whole life on these stands. This is just crazy. I don't know why you would ever just buy other ones, or you know. And the reason with Harbor Freight being the issue is that there were people that after they got replacement stands, they were still doing the same thing. They were still a problem. So clearly that just goes to show, right? Like, they were trying to patch this issue. They are throwing products back out that haven't been fully tested. Boom, you have another problem. Like this isn't like a screwdriver. Like, this is something people are putting 6 tons over their head. It's like,
Yep.
it's just insane how certain companies get away with things like this. And this is why we love having people like Mark on from Company 23, because we know they put out a great product. We know so many of you have their products in your shop, and they do a great job of engineering and testing. I mean, we talked with Mark about the jack stand that he put out the first version. It wasn't right. He went back to the drawing board, created version 2, gave people money back, really made things right. When you get to the size of being Harbor Freight and your whole thing is that you're the cheapest guy around and you're doing it the cheapest way, unfortunately, you're going to run into the most expensive problems. So I think it's just a matter of time until things like that happen. So, was there anything else you wanted to talk about on that?
Oh, and I know that that Mr. Subaru had even he's a internet celebrity in a sense in the space, and he kind of highlighted that a fellow I believe content creator had injured himself working on his car with actually a Harbor Freight tool. It was I believe a ball joint press of some sorts. And Snap-on has a identical product that everyone said was way overpriced, and Snap-on came out and said, we're going to offer this for less than 2/3 less, and okay, if it works once, like you said, good on you. But how many times do you want to trust that tool? Because In this particular uh, real life case, this individual got seriously injured and had to go to the hospital because this tool malfunctioned and broke. And that's something that I always think about: is does the tool have potential to hurt you if it breaks? Um, a screwdriver, kind of less so much. I mean, I guess the handle, the shank can come through the handle and go through your hand, but that's a pretty extreme analogy if you were using it, like a chisel or something. But the use case of certain tools is very different when it comes to your health and safety.
Yeah, and I believe that was a C style press that happened with. Um,
Yeah,
you know, anything with presses, whatever the tools are that you use to get ball joints out, the tools used to compress springs, like I don't trust using anything like that from a company like Harbor Freight. And it's not to drag Harbor Freight. I have their tools. I have stuff from them. I do like them as a company, like in certain aspects, but there are just certain things that I'm sorry, like I just don't trust any company other than the big ones that make these products. And I just, if I'm putting my life on the line, I'm doing it with what I believe is the best possible option, so I don't,
absolutely.
cause a problem.
And
So
as we discussed earlier, I mean, not the anyone who questions is watching. I have a Pittsburgh screwdriver right here that I was using earlier to hang something in my room. Uh, Worked perfectly fine. Didn't kill me. There was no sense of danger in using that screwdriver.
he's he's definitely not paid by Harbor Freight.
No.
um I was gonna show you, so I wanted to, just as a kind of a fun thing here, I was doing some digging and I found a couple Harbor Freight jack stand memes, I guess I would call it, couple modifications. So I'm just gonna put a couple of these up real quick. Let me see. So this is the first one I found. Now, as you can see, someone took a 6-ton Daytona jack stand, and they actually went and welded a brace to it just in case. So, innovative, functional, questionable.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to have a problem with this, because the problem is, if the jack stand were to fall, the center post,
The ratchet, yeah.
that's not going to do anything for you,
Yep.
as far as I can tell, just at least from this angle. It appears like he just made it more structurally, less tippy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe he works in a driveway that's on a hill.
Yeah, I saw this one and I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if this looks like something that I would be working with.
Yeah.
Now another one I got for you here. Got a couple of these. You're good. I saw this one that was shared by Speed Society, which is, I'll trust Harbor Freight jack stands before I'll trust he's just a friend. And I that one I felt deeply so. And then I have, this one is by far my favorite. Now you see,
I've seen this one before.
If you double,
this is actually mildly impressive. It's kind of almost a circus act in a way.
Yeah. See, if you compound the failed ratchets together, you end up with a solid product. I think that's the key to take away from here.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And then my final one, which I thought this one was just a funny thing to add in here, is some Somebody
Oh
said,
man.
just got my my Harbor Freight jack stands in. Yeah.
I like to believe a lot. Some of these things though are kind of like the last one. They're comically done. You know, they're staged to a point.
Yeah.
I like to hope that nobody out there is genuinely trusting their life to something like that. Because I'll tell you another thing is that springs to mind with that picture is just the use of cinder blocks, which are not designed to hold up a car. For anybody listening, watching, PSA: do not use cinder blocks to hold up your vehicle. Problem with them is they can break very easily, unexpected.
Yeah. Uh, Real quick, anybody who wants to see the images, they're on our YouTube channel. It is the Wave Podcast by Super Mechanics. And we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And yeah, these visuals are hilarious, and these are just some examples of some things that we have seen out there. Now, Dave had touched on the C-style press that Mr. Subaru came across, which is pretty important. But something I wanted to touch on that kind of is in that same line is that there's things out there that you should really keep an eye on, because being that tool prices are what they are and Snap-on charges what they charge, as you know, there's always people out there trying to undercut and make a cheaper product. There's a lot of things on eBay and Amazon that are known to be cheap knockoff versions of Subaru's timing kits. They come with cam lock tools and crank pulley holders. These almost always have soft metal that deforms and breaks. It can end up causing you a pretty big issue. The machining is off. Usually, if anybody here has ever bought an aftermarket exhaust, you know machining is not perfect. You got to put it up. It's a little tilted. You got to finagle it. It's just not, with things like that, they make a million of them and they're just pumping them out. So, I mean, you can never expect the machining to be perfect. And then also a lot of these companies anyway, it's hard to order from. You go to order something and it shows up for the wrong year, or, it's always a nightmare. If you don't go with a certified company or something like that, it's always difficult. And Company 23, who was on last week, there's been cases of Chinese counterfeit versions of their stuff. So, people are always trying to copy whoever's the biggest, trying to make their buck on that. And so it's just something that we really need to be careful of and keep an eye out for.
As well as supporting the enthusiasts, like the guys over at Company 23, because they are through and through. They're all enthusiasts, motorsport enthusiasts just like us, and they're passionate. And it's hard when you're fighting that kind of uphill battle, you know what I mean, against these big, Chinese companies who can crank out, a bunch of products for a lot cheaper and don't have the same copyright laws, unfortunately, that we have here. And so you're absolutely right that they're able to just steal designs very easily, and there's not really anything you can do about it, unfortunately.
Something you guys can do to try to make sure you're getting the right product is check for torque ratings. Usually, if a company is making something janky or they don't know what they're making, they're just pumping out cheaper versions of things, they won't have any kind of torque ratings because they have no idea what to torque their product to.
It's a very good point.
And then the other thing is, you want to avoid tools that are multi-fit, universal, fits Subaru, Toyota, and Honda, and Volvo. Like just things that just are like so vague that they work on a million things. I've seen that a lot with TPMS sensor tools. They always claim, if you click on it on eBay or anything like that, the list of cars that this thing functions for is like 10 miles long, but then you order it and it only works for like 3 cars total. Like they could write anything they want. You know, they're a company over wherever they're at, another country. They, if you go and buy their product on eBay or Amazon, they're just gonna take the money and run. It's unfortunate that's the way things are now. So
Yeah, and there's good and bad with that. I mean, certainly from a scan tool standpoint, we utilize a couple, aftermarket, let's call them knockoff scan tools, and famously, Launch is a big name, and one of the tools that we have has been effectively sued by, or tried to be sued by many manufacturers, the likes of which Snap-on included, for literally buying the tool that the competitor made, reverse engineering it, and putting it out as theirs. And the the pros only side of that is you're able to get a tool that is very, very capable for very, very cheap on one level. So, I mean, I got just as a present for my brother-in-law, a little simple plug-in scanner for any time they have any car troubles. And this thing I was looking through the list of what it, like you mentioned, what it can do, but it could do, or at least moderately, a lot of things, for less than $100, which was impressive to say the least. And the other side of things is the capability in something we've touched on before is the variable valve timing with Subarus particularly. And there's a known issue with some cars, particularly if the engine fails. And in the course of that engine failing, or, through its failure, the ECU will effectively learn the variable valve timing values. And they learn these values, and according to the manufacturer, Subaru, these are burned-in values that cannot be cleared with just resetting the ECU, clearing the check engine light, battery terminals. Nothing will clear this. The only thing you can do, according to Subaru, is replace the entire ECU, which we've fortunately have found a workaround on several of the cars that have this issue with one of these aftermarket scan tools. And it gives us that capability to kind of go in on kind of a more of a programming level that you're not necessarily supposed to be able to do, but according to the manufacturer. But
yeah,
the hackers over there at Launch figured out some way to do it, which has been immensely helpful, as you can imagine, for those few customers who have needed that.
yeah. It really is amazing what's possible. Yeah, I would say. Something I was going to mention before that I forgot about is I've actually known a couple people that have worked as investigative engineers. So their whole job is to, like, hey, this thing broke. How do we fix the problem? And one of the stories that I remember is that there was a lawsuit with SodaStream and their bottles. And so what would happen is, if you put a SodaStream bottle in the dishwasher, the heat would oval the circle of the bottle. And the lawsuit was, a woman was filling her SodaStream, and when she went to reach for it, it exploded, and I think she lost her hand. And so a buddy of mine was working as or I guess his boss was working as investigating for SodaStream how this happened. And so through testing, he found out that the top of the bottles were ovaling, and then it wouldn't allow the pressure to escape properly, and it ended up exploding. And so these are the things, right? When these things go wrong, the first thing Harbor Freight should have done is taken these jack stands and brought them into the factory and said what went wrong. And I think that goes as well for the C-style press and some of these tools that you can buy that are from China and things like that. It's like, it's crazy what you find out when you like dig into like what actually went wrong with these. One thing that we were talking about that we're going to switch it up here is wheel spacers. So wheel spacers to me are one of these topics that Every person has their own opinion on wheel spacers. They either love them or they hate them, or they only use certain ones or only certain widths, and they just have all of these opinions on it. Um, the biggest thing for me is that I don't mind using wheel spacers, but it has to be in specific instances, and they should be hub centric wheel spacers only.
Absolutely.
If you're not using hub centric, there's a million issues with that. When you use hub centric wheel spacers, you get less vibration, you get better fitment. Um, you are displacing the load properly through all four of your wheels, not just on the studs, which is the problem if they're not hub centric. You're putting the full weight of that corner of the car on your studs only. Don't like that.
They're not designed. They're not designed to do that.
And the hub centric ones are good enough that you could use it if you're, racing around or whatever. Like they're not ideal. I think people always try to avoid them. Just get proper wheels that kind of fill in for the width you're trying to get. But in certain use cases, you could run hub centric wheel spacers, even if it's, I wouldn't go anything crazy like over an inch and a half or two or something. But the hub centric ones, people avoid them because they're usually more expensive. They have to match the wheel bore exact, whereas a lot of non-hub centric ones, they just come as a disc with like 8 different versions of stud fitments, and it's all crazy. And again, we're back on the same topic. Don't trust anything that says universal. It's like, if it says universal and fits everything, it's that, what that means? It's not directly designed for your car, and you are putting it on. So,
That's another kind of side pet peeve of mine personally, has always been particularly rims that have 2 sets of wheel bolt patterns designed into them. Again, personal preference. I just cannot stand the look of that. I think it's just, like you said, it's a Swiss Army knife kind of approach. Like, hey, I'm going to make this rim that can fit, a Mustang and a Subaru. It's like, those aren't the same type of vehicles that are maybe have the best look. And then I think you're right that a lot of times when wheel spacers are more oftentimes used, it's to achieve fitment of a wheel that is not effectively designed to be on the vehicle. And that doesn't negate wanting to change up certain characteristics of offset, things like that, from a cosmetic style handling standpoint. But that's another point that I think a lot of people don't understand, that if you're just doing it from a cosmetic appearance standpoint, which I think most people are, that's all fine and well. But when you get into on a performance level and actually wanting to improve the handling characteristics of your car, there is a lot of engineering that goes into understanding and designing and building rather a car that has a proper track width, wheel offset, and everything like that, that's designed to have a particular handling characteristic. I mean, extreme analogy, if you took a wheel and you flipped it inside out and you mounted it backwards so it, was sticking out way past the fender, well, everyone goes, well, the car would handle terribly. That's kind of what you're doing in a short by now spacing that wheel and changing that center point of where that center line of where that wheel is supposed to be. That is something that the manufacturer is very, very keen on designing from the ground up and making sure that the wheel is utilizing the best efficiency of rolling resistance. Because as you start to space your wheels out more, you increase your rolling resistance, as well as all of a sudden now you increase the wear on other components like your suspension components, your wheel bearings, ball joints, things like that are now subject to more strenuous forces. And that will ultimately cause those things to wear out prematurely. So if you're willing to do those things just for the, let's call it the looks, To each their own, as we always say. If that's what you want to build, go for it. But we always encourage everybody to make sure that you're building a car for yourself and not building your car for other people.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's funny because there's certain things that I know for a fact that people have gone out, bought a car, and taken it to the drag strip before they've even pulled the wheels off it. So,
Yep.
there's people that end up going to the drag strip with wheel spacers on. They don't even know. They're just, I bought the car like that. They always take it to, you know, Jiffy Lube, or they go to Mavis or whatever's near you, and they just get their work done on their car, and then they've never taken the wheels off themselves. So the shop probably is like, well, there's wheel spacers on here, just leave them. And then next thing you know, you go down racing at the drag strip or something, and come to find out you have universal, like 3-inch spacers or something.
That's a very good point. And I think that's another interesting point that people should be aware of, the shop that they're taking their vehicle to. If you are someone that, and that's not to say you are someone that cares about going fast and performance aspects and everything being perfect, rather, if you're somebody that cares about your safety, your own health and safety, make sure you are in line and invested with a shop that's invested in your health and safety and overly all looking for you, out for you. And that's something that we make a big point to whenever we see cars with wheel spacers or non-hub centric rings on aftermarket rims. We always make a point to mention that to customers, and you'd be surprised. You're right. A lot of times they just don't know. They didn't know. They either bought the car like that, as you said, or they got these wheels and the wheels fit, in the driveway, and they bolted up, so they fit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, because, and we'll bring them out to the shop sometimes and show them, hey, look, with the wheel, all the lug nuts off, we can move this thing around. See, it's not staying centered like it's supposed to. And the fix for that is, of course, like I said, the use of a hub-centric ring. They make them, and these things are cheap. They're just simply little plastic spacer rings, for anyone that doesn't know, that go on over the hub and adapt that diameter to make it fit the newer, bigger size of the aftermarket wheel. And that's very important, like you said, because effectively studs are designed in a particular fashion to, from a standpoint of shear strength being a pull comparative to a lateral being pulled or being ripped off. And so that's something that is, you're absolutely right, is really important that people understand, is that it does transcend to a safety issue. And for anyone that's ever seen the that unfortunate situation where that car's on the side of the road after they hit a pothole or something and their wheel goes flying off, that's unfortunately usually more oftentimes than not what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to touch on what you said about where you take your car, because that's what our whole group is about, is taking your car to a specialist in Subaru, somebody who cares about your car and isn't going to let you just roll down the road, with your wheel moving like that. Like I said, Dave's out in Colorado. We got Flat Out Industries over in Milford, New Jersey, Teeter Automotive, and I believe Illinois. And then Induction Auto Works down in Delaware as well. So we have a great network of shops that work with us all over the place. My shop is over in Washington, New Jersey. We do Subaru, but, really in this area, Flat Out is the specialist. So I would definitely go and see Dan. He's awesome. And if you guys go to Boxer Fest this year, Dan was there last year. So he's a really cool guy. And if you guys are looking for a specialist, he's definitely the one to meet in that area. So as far as the wheel spacers go, something that I also wanted to mention is just that, like, as far as off-road usage goes, I feel like you might be okay with a non-hub centric, right? If you're driving a 90s Jeep Wrangler and the thing's got crazy off-road mud tires, you're probably not going to notice. It's not the best option, but I would say that if you're worried about vibration or wobble or, you know, any kind of issues with your wheels, um, those vehicles normally, I feel like, wobble and shake and have those issues anyway. So that might be the one case where it might not be a bad thing, but definitely if you guys are doing any kind of performance, make sure you go to the proper shops, make sure they check the car, make sure that your brakes are good, your tires are good. I mean, I always go to the local tri-state Subaru gang drives in New Jersey, and they do the Tail of the Dragon trip every year now. They went last year, which was cool. And I saw them post that, like, the owner of the group is doing tech checks before anybody is even able to go. He's checking brakes, he's checking tires, wants to make sure everything is in spec. And that's important. Like, that's where things like this become serious. If he gets under there and finds out that you have a regular wheel spacer and that could possibly endanger other people, like, that's important to make sure you're on top of that. So something I wanted to highlight, because it actually just popped up on my computer, is that Jeremy Stegman in the Super Mechanics group just said that he was going to help us out and send us some shorts of the show. So that's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
It's cool to get feedback like that. So yeah.
No, we appreciate all the support, of course.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it has been amazing. This whole group and the people in it, I just feel like there's always so much support. And that's what we tried to build from the beginning, was help with diagnosing and fixing cars and trying to be the helping hand in the community. So it's awesome.
We talked about before, as it gets more and more technical, unfortunately, it gets harder and harder to find the wiring diagrams, for example, online, and know that you have the right accurate wiring diagram for your make and model. We both Pat and I, we grew up at the age of Chilton's manuals, and,
yeah, we were talking about that
and reading through those. But no, for the modern generation, those don't exist anymore, unfortunately. And that resource, unless you have a subscription to an all data, and sometimes, as you know, that's not always guaranteed to give you everything, and that's where we have subscriptions to multiple different resources that give us as close to if not OEM level diagnostic equipment or information.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The Chilton manuals are my favorite. I was a big fan. I had all the Subaru manuals and stuff, and I always read through them. There's so much good information in there. Nowadays, you just type it in Google and it just tells you. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
Well, this is my favorite part of the show. We are going to go into what I have coined the WRX files, where we are going back in Subaru's history. We're looking at things that existed, things that didn't exist, mysteries, things that Subaru never wanted to talk about again, things that Subaru did that actually were pushing the brand. And one of the things that they did was, at one point, Subaru made diesel engines. I believe they're still kind of toying around with diesel, but they came out with the EE20, which was a diesel engine that was a 2-liter double overhead cam. It's making well, I don't really know what this converts to, but 110 kilowatts at 3,600 RPMs. So take that for what it is. Yeah. It was shown at the Geneva Motor Show in 2007, and it was offered in the Legacy, Outback, Forester, and the Impreza in the European market, starting in 2008. and it was paired with a 5-speed manual trans, and later upgraded to a 6-speed manual for certain models. I also read that there was CVT transmissions that were paired with these. I don't know if that's an aftermarket thing, but um, I did see that. And so the engine, just so people watching on YouTube can see, let me just do this. So this is what the engine looked like. This is actually from a New Zealand company that works on these cars, and they are saying that basically they have these diesel engines with either 6-speed manual gearboxes or CVT auto transmissions to suit the engine need. I don't know if that's something that just this company offers, but I did read that, and I thought it was interesting that they have that as an option. Um, Really cool design. I think it was maybe maybe something that Subaru tried, but they weren't sure on. I mean, it only put out, here we go. It only put out 150 horsepower and about
That'd be
350.
really cool to put into our lifted Subaru that we have, our H6.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Hmm.
um yeah, I mean, just a cool design. I had a picture here of it at the Geneva show. Let me see if I can find it. Um I'll have to see if I can pull it up again. I had a picture here somewhere. But yeah, it's such a cool design. It's the H4, obviously, like flat four, double overhead cam. Um, and I personally am a huge fan of diesel cars. I never thought about it, and I never really, because I don't live in Europe and like we don't have a lot of those here. I never drove a Jetta or whatever, but um when I went over to Ireland, I got to drive a right-hand drive Hyundai uh Tucson. I think it's the new Hyundai Tucson. It's a 1.8 diesel turbo, and it was, I believe, 5-speed. And that thing was so fun. I haven't had that much fun in a manual car in a while. And I was just ripping in the roads over there, and I just had a great time. I thought that for a nice mid-sized car that had a little bit of a hatch to it almost, it had good power, it had good handling. I mean, I loved it. And I feel like if Subaru wanted to ever go back down the diesel road, and maybe, I guess they can't really bring them to the US. That's a little bit of a stretch, but you know, I think that there's still potential there. You never know what you're gonna get.
Well, our biggest problem is a market, a lack of a market, I think, as you mentioned, for, diesel outside of, big trucks,
Yeah, and it did have
Like
issues as
Volkswagen tried
well.
to do it with diesels, and Volkswagen is, offered diesels for, ever. And I know I've seen them here, they've definitely sold some, but I feel like that is definitely a lesser of the options when people are going into, any given dealership, even a Volkswagen dealership. They're like, yeah, give me the diesel option, you know?
Yeah, and people know that the fuel is just going to be a better option for them when they go in and pick something like that.
Yeah.
But the one thing that these engines had issues with was the first years of production, the crankshaft couldn't withstand the load. So they were having issues with that. Then in 2010, they updated the motor and the problem was gone. So that's good. They figured that out. Then the main headache became the exhaust cleaning system. They were having issues with that. They couldn't get it to function properly. Then bad fuel injectors started to fail in EGR valve clogs. If you didn't replace the plugs in time, you'd have to drill them. It just, it was just problem after problem. And I think that, again, Subaru's so smart in what they do. They have no problem innovating and going outside of the box. But I feel like when they hit something like this that's outside of their brand, and it's something that they're toying with, they're not sure about it, there's all these issues, they're like, you know what? Let's just stop. Let's just stop. We don't have to do diesel. We really don't. We could just walk away and do something else. nobody's gonna fault us for it. We tried, It's kind of, it reminds me of Nintendo, right? Like Nintendo figured out the sauce many years ago. They figured out what they make. They figured out family friendly was their category. Sometimes they go into the other realm of trying different things and making different consoles and stuff, but at the end of the day, they know what they're about and they're not changing. And I feel like with Subaru, their brand is built on, you know, flat floor, all wheel drive, you know, people know them for gas. And I just think that diesel is a little bit of stepping into a different ring. And it's just not something that really needs to be touched on.
I know they made a 3-liter diesel, the H6. I know they made those in diesel for other markets. I don't know for how long or all of the details surrounding, because again, it was never really offered in our American market, of course.
Yeah, it's always awesome when they come up with different ideas. Like the H6 was such a cool engine. Like, could you imagine hearing that thing like diesel? It's probably
Oh
insane.
yeah. Well, I've seen people turbocharge them as well, so I would be inclined to be intrigued in seeing a turbo diesel option of an H6.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing with diesel is again, it's just not in the US market. I think the US is so heavy against emissions that for Subaru, I mean, they probably were like, you know what, we're only ever going to offer this in Europe. It's or New Zealand apparently. But they're like, you know what, this really wasn't our jam, and they just turn and look the other way. So,
Yeah.
um I just felt like this was kind of a cool thing that they built and something that they put
Oh yeah.
together. And yeah, yeah, Subaru has such an interesting history. And something that you might not know about me, Dave, is that I have worked as a private investigator since I was 16. Um, my dad had his own company and still does. And I was cracking cases since high school, and my dad used to throw me in the dumpster and pull out papers and tape them together. And like, I just used to do all this crazy stuff, like investigating all these different cases. And I have now entered my dad phase. I think I'm diving down the Subaru rabbit hole looking for things that they've put together, and a couple different projects. Um, I tried to find if Subaru had ever toyed around with rotary engines, and I wasn't able to find anything. I think that as far as rotary goes, it's just way outside of their jam. It's nothing that they ever wanted to mess with. I'm sure that they investigate those kind of things and see the technology and they try to use it, but I don't think they ever wanted to make anything down that road. So
And it's kind of always been Mazda's thing, let's be honest.
yeah, true. True.
They kind of made it their thing, and it's kind of like not so much a copyright or a patent by any means, from an engine design standpoint. Similarly, for anyone who was unaware, Subaru is not the only boxer engines out there. Porsche uses them as well. But I think Subaru kind of decided to stick with, like you said, kind of what they were known for and what they kind of established years ago when they were just saying we're going to be the boxer engine all-wheel drive, every car pretty much, with the exception of the BRZs, of course.
Yeah. Um yeah, I think there's just so much rich history in Subaru. I mean, from where basically, I'll just give you guys kind of a rundown of where we're going. Is that Subaru, as we talked about last podcast, it all began in World War II with these plane companies that were making planes for World War II. And then after everything broke off, then Toyota came out of Tachigawa, and Fuji Heavy Industries came out of Nakajima, and these companies started to form. And then Toyota, or I'm sorry, with Subaru, I mean, that came out of the conglomerate of all of these companies together and forming what is Subaru today. And so there's so much history and so many projects and so many things that people have um, just built on and things that have been designed. And I'm really tracing back the history to the first ever boxer engine that Subaru put together. And I've found some good info on it. And so I think next week that's going to be what we dive into. And Dave, feel free if you have anything in the WRX files that you want to, dig up or bring on. I'm down.
I'll look some stuff up.
Yeah. um, as for everybody else, we appreciate you guys being here with us today. It's a little bit of a shorter podcast, but we were supposed to have Trenton Teeter on from Teeter Automotive. We had some hangups with that, so we're actually going to try to get him on next week, and should be a really cool podcast. He's been absolutely killing it. Massive warehouses they're putting together. He is doing tons of engine repair. We're going to talk to him a little bit about tuning, and it's going to be a really cool conversation with him. And as far as the community goes, we really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate everyone following us. Really, for us, all we care about is that everybody enjoys the show and interaction. If you give us a like or subscribe or whatever, we really appreciate all the follows and everything. And Dave and I are looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
And if anyone has any good topics that they want, that they think would be something they want us to discuss, throw it in the comments.
Yes,
we're always reading the comments.
We were checking the comments. We want to get the feedback from the community. We want to talk about what you guys are talking about, and we are also for sure going to be putting up a post on the canola oil topic.
Yes, that's coming very soon.
Yeah, we're all going to be taking bets. Everybody better comment on that post and put in whatever your bet is for how many miles this car is going to go. And whoever gets, I'm even going to go as far as whoever gets closest, we will send you something.
And we will have a limit. It's going to be, because we're going to change it at 3,000. We're not going to just keep running it till it blows up. So
yeah,
you can bet basically from 0 miles up to 3,000, and then we're going to change it.
My bet is 1 mile. No.
Oh.
No, I think
I've got confidence in our old girl. Our Baja is she's seen a lot already. Just being a shop vehicle, as you can imagine. Everyone. Sometimes the guys will take that to go get lunch. So it's seen some things.